Hi, it is 7:33 p.m. on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. Good evening. My name is Christian Klein. I am the chair of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm calling this meeting of the board to order. I would first like to confirm that all members and anticipated officials are present. Members of the Zoning Board of Appeals, Roger DuPont.
Here.
Patrick Hanlon.
Here.
Venkat Hawley.
Here.
Adam LeBlanc.
Here.
And Mr. Baranowski is unable to join us this evening. From the town, we have Colleen Ralston, our zoning assistant.
Here.
Good to have you with us. And then appearing for docket 3835, 28 Draper Avenue, Vipender Singh and Kelly Casey. Good to have you with us as well. So tonight's meeting of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted remotely, consistent with the supplemental budget bill signed by Governor Healy on March 29th, 2023, which extended temporary provisions pertaining to the open meeting law to March 31st, 2025, which is now, I've been told, extended to 2027. The extension of these provisions allows public bodies to hold their meetings remotely by providing live, adequate alternative means of public access to the deliberations. This meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast by ACMi. Members of the public who are participating via Zoom and who wish to offer public comment should be aware they'll be asked to provide their full name and address so that a complete public record of the meeting can be taken in accordance with state law. All participants of this meeting are advised that people may be listening to the meeting without offering public comment, and those people are not required to identify themselves. Any votes that are taken this evening will be conducted by roll call. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. As chair, I reserve the right to take items out of order in the interest of promoting an orderly meeting. So going to our agenda online, I'm going to go ahead and pass on the administrative items for the moment so we can move on to the hearings. Before opening tonight's meeting for public hearings, some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of tonight's business. After I announce each agenda item, I will ask the applicant to introduce themselves or themselves to make their presentations to the board. Then request that members of the board ask what questions they have on their proposal. And after the board's questions have been answered, I'll open the meeting for public comment. At the conclusion of public comment, the board will deliberate and vote to either continue or close the public hearing. All votes will be conducted by roll call vote. The final vote on any matter before the board will be taken at a subsequent meeting once the written decision has been drafted and provided to the board. The decision will then be filed with the town clerk, starting the 20-day appeal period under state law. After that time, the applicant may proceed with their building permit. However, under state law, no decision granted by this board shall take effect until a certified copy of the final decision has been filed with and recorded at the Middlesex South Registry of Deeds in Cambridge by the applicant. So with that, moving to item 4 on our agenda this evening, which is the continuation of docket 3835, 28 Draper Avenue. At the conclusion of the meeting on February 25th, the board had voted to continue this hearing. The board specifically had wanted to look at a few issues and wanted to discuss with the building inspector and with council. We were looking at some issues about nonconformity, some issues of how the Historical Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals would interact when they were doing so. And then we wanted to look at accessory dwelling units and setbacks and the creation of some additions we were having. So with that, I would turn to Mr. Lodge, who's the applicant's architect, and ask him if he can talk us through the changes they've proposed.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me. For some reason, the video of me is not working. I'm not sure why, but hopefully you can hear me.
We trust you were there.
All right. Yes. So if I can share my screen, which I think you guys all have copies of, but if I can share my screen, I can walk you through what we have done. Basically, we've made changes so that we're no longer seeking a variance, or at least not specifically seeking a variance. We're I think at this point we're looking for well, before I say that, I just want to ask.
You should be able to share now.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Based on our last meeting, it seems to me that the setbacks are pretty inviolable, except under the sort of landscape provisions that, that you enumerated at the last meeting. Is that correct?
Believe so.
The reason I ask is that the clients are, you know, that we've come up with a scheme that we think works. If we could make it a foot wider, I feel like it would work a lot better. But I don't know if a miss is as good as a mile. So I just put that forward to you guys at this before we start to see if we can get some feedback.
Are you able to share?
Yeah, I think I am. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. What do I have to click to share?
There should be center on the bottom of the screen. There should be a green up arrow that says share. If you're staring at everyone's faces.
And see, oh, there's, sorry. Go ahead.
That's the one.
All right, sorry about that. So as I was saying, we've come up with what we believe is a conforming design. However, before we move to that, I did want to ask. So the client is still interested in. So right now the width of the conforming addition is 12'10", and we feel like if it was 14, it would work a lot better. But based on the conversation we had last time about the setbacks, I just thought we'd bring it up and ask. But I feel like I know what your answer is going to be, but I would like to just ask on your behalf.
So the required rear yard setback is 20% of the length of the lot
right,
of 88 feet, so 17.6 feet.
Right, which ends up being 17.7
Yeah. So as long as you have that, then you are not creating a new nonconformity.
Right. And so if we went 3 inches beyond that, you know, that's based on our discussion last time. You know, I think we have to conform to the setback sort of full stop. Is that correct?
That is
And
correct.
there's no sort of wiggle room.
Otherwise, it becomes a variance.
You're right, and we beat that horse pretty well last time. All right. Well, that being said, so the scheme that we now have meets the side yard setbacks, the rear yard setbacks. It also meets the stipulation that the usable open space has 25 feet in either direction. I think there was a question from you yesterday based on a Google Street View.
Correct.
And I don't know if you saw the picture that I uploaded, but so basically there's a gate in the driveway which leads into the backyard, which then leads to the garage. And I went over this with Mike Champa yesterday and a few weeks ago. And it's his belief that all of this space here, or all of this space here as it's currently configured, has to be considered to be access to the garage in the back, and therefore it does not meet the usable open space, the definition of usable open space, which is why. So originally, in my analysis, I was considering the barn to be an accessory building, not a garage, which we cleared up last time. It is a garage. And so then based on my conversations with him, he said, given that it is a garage and that you have access to the backyard, you cannot consider what's there now to be usable open space, which is why I changed the existing usable open space to 0. And now what we're proposing is going to increase it from 0 to 800 square. So it's still a nonconformity, but it's lessened.
Um, and then so it'll still be 2 stories or 2 stories in the
Two story,
basement.
yes, two stories. So the basement is less than, less than half above ground, so so the basement doesn't count. So
Yep.
it's a first floor. Well, the new first floor addition is about 330, but less the existing sort of back hall. So basically the aggregate of the new proposed first floor is an addition of 280 square feet, or sorry, 274 square feet. And the second floor is an addition of 281 square feet, giving us a total of 555 square feet.
Okay. So it's less than seven. So that
It's less than,
is
yeah,
it
it's less than
is it
700.
less than 750 gross square feet total?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I went over this with
Yeah.
Mr. Chomp as well.
Um, so what we're looking at, so it's an addition. So the addition no longer needs approval as a large addition because it's less than 750 square feet.
Correct.
Because it's an attached accessory dwelling unit, it doesn't need a special permit from the board. So I think the real question, the only question is the usable open space, and that's a situation where um, the area behind the house today, even though it meets the actual requirements for usable open space for area, it doesn't meet the criteria because it's actually vehicular in nature because of the access to the garage. So you
Correct.
have 0 usable open space now. Um, Going forward, so you're adding usable open space. So you're making it more compliant than it was today.
Correct.
Um,
By the way, this is all predicated on the idea that we are going to file to take down the one.
yeah.
So yeah.
Um,
I
the
mean,
only
I know
question,
that's
so because
evident,
you
but
have zero usable open space today, I see the addition you have it right now is 24'7", so that you can maintain that 25 feet to the side lot
correct.
line.
Correct.
Where you
Well,
have
to
0
the
now, you could in theory make that addition wider um, than 24'7", because you're not going to make the usable open space condition worse.
well, if I make it any bigger than that, then I so basically this wall is set by being 25 feet away from
Yep.
the side line. So if I go any further than that, then I still have no, I guess you could argue, well, you have no open space. I could 0 to 0
Yep.
is a wash. However, it doesn't, and I guess that's something to discuss with Kelly. I'm not sure that particular dimension helps us that much anyway, so it's
Yeah,
silly.
no, I just raise it in case it's I would ask Mr. Hanlon his opinion on it as well, but my sense is because you have no usable open space now, you don't have to provide any. And even if you do provide it, you're going to be providing it to a level that doesn't meet the requirement. So
Right, right, yeah.
because it's an existing nonconformity and you're not making it worse, you're making it better. Um, sort of by definition, it's not
Right. It's not increasing in
an issue.
existence.
Are there questions from the board for the applicant? So Raj, if you wouldn't mind just going through the elevation. Sorry, I forgot to ask that
Oh,
before.
sure. Yeah, I apologize. Sorry. So, here's the front elevation. And you will see, so there's a new back door, which is right here. So you will see, um, about 5 feet of the new addition from the driveway. Of course, you're not going to see the barn that was in the back on the other side. And then on the right-hand side, so here's the proposed addition. So the roof basically, let me go and show you. So it's not symmetrical. So basically, it comes down. It comes down to almost the first floor level on the right-hand side, whereas it's basically sort of a little below the second floor level on the left-hand side, which is and there's a new back door facing the driveway. And then the elevation looking towards the rear yard is, and actually this does recall to some degree the elevation of the existing barn, just because we started with that and it worked out. So.
Great. Questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll go ahead. Mr. Lodge, if you wouldn't mind stopping the share.
Sure.
I'm now going to open the meeting for public comment. Public questions and comments are taken as they relate to the matter at hand and should be directed to the board for the purpose of informing its decision. Members of the public will be granted time to ask questions and make comments. Those who wish to speak should digitally raise their hand using the button on the React tab in the Zoom application. Those calling in by phone, please dial *9 to indicate you would like to speak. You'll be called upon by the chair. You'll be asked to give your full name and address for the record and given time for your questions and comments. All questions will be addressed through the chair. Please remember to speak clearly. And once all public questions and comments have been addressed, the public comment period will be closed. So with that, are there any members of the public who wish to address this application, which is number 3835 28 Draper Avenue? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period for this hearing. So what the board has before it, it's now just a straightforward addition to an existing house. It happens to be historical, but that doesn't impact our decision here. That's for someone else. But it's an accessory dwelling unit that's attached to the building. As we said, that does not require a special permit from the board. It is less than 750 square feet, so it is not a large addition. So that it does not create an issue. The only excuse me thing at question is about the change in the quantity of usable open space, where that is an existing nonconformity in that the property has 0 usable open space. And by the creation of the addition, it will remain at 0 usable open space. And once the barn has received a demolition permit and been removed from the property, there will be some usable open space, but it will not reach the 30% threshold to be considered compliant. So it'll remain a nonconformity, but a reduced nonconformity at that point. Mr. Hanlon. You're still muted, sir. There we go.
We've had a lot of cases in the past where we've gone to 0 open space to a greater degree of the open space. But here, instead of going from 0 to a greater degree of 0, we're going from 0 to a less of a degree of 0. In other words, they're closer after the project than they were before. And under section 8.1.3b, the predicate of our giving a special permit at all is that there's an intensification of an existing nonconformity. And here, there doesn't seem to be an intensification. There's the opposite of an intensification. And I think I'm guessing that the applicant would just as soon have a special permit and eliminate all possible questions, but I'm not quite sure what the basis is for us to grant one or for the building inspector to require one.
So essentially, you're saying that this should be a by right development.
That's right, because you're not intensifying the existing nonconformity, you're reducing it.
I think that definitely has some merit because the request for special permit was requesting, it really had to do with the fact that the moving the existing barn was going to be creating a nonconformity. But at this stage, the proposed addition will be greater than 10 feet off the left-hand lot line, so that remains conforming. Will be 17.6 off the rear lot line, so that will be conforming. It's 25 off the right, so that'll be conforming. It is lower than the top of the roof, so the height is conforming, the number of stories is conforming. The lot coverage percentage, I don't know if anyone has looked at that. I don't think that is, especially once the barn comes down, that won't be any different.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. LeBlanc.
the lot coverage on the updated drawings that were submitted, there's a line on that, and according to the calculations there, they're already non-conforming on that.
Oh, okay.
The required is 35%, and the actual listed there is 33.9.
Oh, okay, so they're under already.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's conforming and it'll be even more conforming afterwards.
So yes, sorry.
Perfect. So is the board able to is the board allowed to make a finding that in its determination a special permit is not required, or is that something we're allowed to do? Mr. Hanlon? What's your sense?
I said, well, we have in the past done things like that, but I don't really. I mean, in an abundance of caution, you would think that you would want to have the ISD agree with that, because otherwise you put the applicant in the impossible position that we haven't given him a permit because the applicant doesn't think that we don't think they need it, and the inspector thinks that they do need it, and therefore they can't go forward, and there's no place they can get relief. So I'm sort of thinking that, but I don't really know what it is that we are excusing, except I suppose, I mean, the one thing is that of course it's all conditioned on the barn actually coming down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They don't meet it until that actually happens. So, and we can't condition doing nothing. So it may very well be that the safest thing to do is to grant a special permit, condition it on ultimately the garage. You know, it is automatically conditioned by the papers before us, which require the garage to come down, and that way they can't do anything with it until they're able to take the garage down. And at the end of that period, they have a piece of paper that probably solves any objections. So even if it wasn't necessary, even if it was beyond our abilities to grant, it would still be better for them, because they would have some assurance that it wasn't subject to some challenge later on. So I guess I proceed to, I mean, I'm troubled a little bit by it, just in terms of setting a precedent here. But because in general, I think if the situation happens, we probably don't need a building permit. But I'm wondering whether it's doing the applicants any favor to stop now.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah,
Sorry, could I
Mr.
weigh
Lutz,
in?
go ahead.
So when I was speaking to Mr. Champa, basically what he was saying is that he would grant a permit sort of conditioned. He'd grant a permit now conditioned on the on the idea that we would take the barn down as soon as the historic commission's hold was off.
Okay. He had mentioned to me as well that that was a possibility.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So I just had a question based upon the comment that you made to Mr. Lodge about the possibility that they could go wider than the 24.7 feet. And I wasn't sure that I followed all of the logic behind whether they might want to do that or not. But I mean, when we do issue a special permit, we always say that it's based upon the plans that have been submitted and they have to adhere to those. So I was just thinking that if in fact they wanted to make changes, if we're issuing a special permit, then they can't. Whereas if we don't, and we say one is not necessary, they could conceivably discuss with Mr. Champa the possibility that they did want to make an alteration to the plan, as long as it was still conforming. So I don't know if maybe I'm misunderstanding what the discussion was, but I wanted to make sure that, you know, if they had
Yep.
any intention of altering the plans, that we sort of take that into account.
Well, I think one of the things that Mr. Lodge was sort of pointing out is that the way, if looking at that rear elevation, because they're trying to catch the roof pitch of the adjacent roof coming across, like moving that wall out doesn't really gain them actually any extra interiors.
Okay.
It gains
All right.
space on one floor, but not on the upper floor.
Understood. So it's not a real issue either way. Yeah.
I don't think it is. Yeah, so certainly I think what the board, so the opinion of the board is that we like this project. I think we want this project to go forward. We're just finding the right way to do it so that it doesn't cause any further hit to the applicant.
Right.
So if the board will go through the special permit review criteria, but I think what the board would be essentially saying is we would make a statement in regards to the usable open space, because that's sort of the only thing that's a question at the moment. In granting the special permit, I would, when we come to conditions, I think having a condition that a demolition permit be filed for the barn, being a condition of the permit. I don't think we should condition it on the final raising of the barn, because that obviously could be delayed by up to a year, which would, you know, certainly be an inconvenience for the applicant. I think, and as Mr. Hodges, the building inspector seems inclined to grant the construction permit, knowing that the barn is set to be raised, even though its raising is being delayed. So, effectively, this is just we would be granting a special permit, I guess, under section 8.1. I guess maybe, so we say 8.1, would it be 8.1.1? Quickly pull up the zoning bylaw, make sure I'm citing the correct thing. I think we would, use section 811A, which is the non-conforming uses and structures. It's the applicability. Pre-existing non-conforming structures and uses may be extended or altered, provided that no such alteration or extension shall be permitted unless there's a finding by the zoning board of appeals. Should not be more detrimental. I think it's good to cover all we have in our bylaw. And then we would be looking at required findings for a special permit. So the first, the adverse effects of the proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts. So this is a small, modestly sized addition that fits within the required construction required setbacks, and is very well proportioned to the building. I especially appreciate that the window layout is nice and symmetrical and very pleasing. Just nice to see. The requested use is allowed by special permit within the district. This is a single family house. In addition to a single family house is allowed, and the special permit in regards to the existing nonconformity. While requested use is essential or desirable for public convenience or welfare, the applicants are seeking to add an accessory dwelling unit to accommodate multi-generational family, and that is something that the board and the town is seeking to improve the conditions. Therefore, requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or impair pedestrian safety. It's at the rear of the property, so it won't impact pedestrians and it won't increase traffic. Requested use will not overload any public systems. It is a modest addition. It will not overload any of our current utilities. There are no special regulations. Requested use will not impair the character or the integrity of the district. It fits well within the historic character of the district. We understand that the barn, while considered a historic structure, is not in good condition, and as is not really usable. And the new addition does fit in well with the character of the house and the property, and will allow the house to continue to be used as it is today. Requested use will not be detrimental to public health or welfare. It just won't. The requested use will not cause an excess of that use detrimental to the neighborhood, and will not do that either. Those are the findings that the board is required to make. And then we would be looking at conditions. So there are 3 standard conditions that the board would apply to any of its decisions. So the first is that the plans and specifications approved by the board for the special permit shall be the final plans and specifications submitted to the building inspector of the town of Arlington. In connection with this application for zoning relief, there shall be no deviation during construction from approved plans and specifications without the express written approval of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals. The second is the building inspector is hereby notified they're to monitor the site and should proceed with appropriate enforcement procedures at any time they determine that violations are present. Building inspector shall proceed under section 3.1 of the zoning bylaw and under the provisions of chapter 40, section 21D of the Massachusetts General Laws and institute non-criminal complaints. If necessary, the building inspector may also approve and institute appropriate criminal action also in accordance with section 3.1. And number 3 is that the board shall maintain continuing jurisdiction with respect to the special permit grant. I believe we were looking at appropriate conditions. So I think one condition was that the applicants shall apply for a demolition permit for the barn. Board acknowledges that the demolition would be subject or delay by the Historical Commission. And then does the board want to say is there any other conditions that members of the board feel will be appropriate? Seeing none. Uh, would ask Mr. Hanlon if he would be prepared to draft a decision in the affirmative.
Yes.
Okay, so with that, I would move that the Zoning Board of Appeals for the town of Arlington move to close the public hearing for docket 3835, 28 Draper Street. This will the board will then prepare its draft decision and vote on the final decision at the subsequent meeting. But on that motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Mr. Hanlon. So roll call vote of members present to close the public hearing. Mr. Dupont,
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So we are closed on 28 Draper Street. So we will prepare a decision in favor of approval, and we will just vote on that final language at our next meeting. And so you're all set.
Well, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So with that, we go back to our agenda. So item number 2 on our agenda was the approval of the minutes from our March 11th, 2025 meeting. These were presented to the board for questions and comments. Questions and comments going back to Ms. Ralston. Are there any additional questions or comments in regards to the minutes from our March 11th meeting?
Could I just comment that getting the minutes in this time frame, when we actually still remember what happened, is a tremendous advantage over our historical practice, and I think that Ms. Ralston definitely needs a commendation for achieving that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, with that, I move that the Board of Appeals of the Town of Arlington approve the minutes from the March 11th, 2025 meeting of the board. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote of the board to approve. Mr. Dupont,
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes, the minutes are approved. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is in relation to docket 3802, 296 Washington Street. So this was a decision that the board had made, and there's a typographical error in that it mentions one of the hearing dates as being in June of 2025 instead of June 2024. But everywhere else in the document, it says 2024. So this was identified by the building inspector when he was going through the decision to confirm that the construction documents met the requirements. And it was flagged and brought to council to ask what the board ought to do. And there's a little bit of difference of opinion on how the board should proceed with this. Partly because if the board, if we amend the decision, then theoretically it has to be refiled with the with the Registrar of Deeds. And so I know, Pat, I know you had looked into Baranowski, which is sort of the go-to for zoning in Massachusetts. What did you see there?
Well, he doesn't deal with the situation that we have before us, which is where the opinion has gone final. He deals with the situation where you realize that there's a typo in it after it's been approved by the board, but while it still hasn't been filed with the land records or anything like that. His view is that anything that doesn't actually touch on the substance of the decision is something that can be administratively corrected without a motion or reopening the case or anything of that sort. And that can just happen. You can't do this in a way that changes the result or changes the reason for the result in a substantial way. But in just picking out typographical errors or, obviously, stuff that just got in there, you can. I'm not sure. I mean, I think I would not want to be, there's this one, my understanding on this particular case actually is that originally there was a question about something that had come up that was really about a different case, the Ariel Street case.
Right.
And this thing has just happened to have attracted some scrutiny. There's no, as far as I know, there's no holdup with ISD on this. It's just that we have out there an opinion that has a typographical error in it. And it is my opinion that the number of opinions that we have out there with typographical errors in them is, probably less than 1 million, but more than 10, more than 15. These things are easy. Now, obviously, here, they're technically maybe making a mistake on the date is different because it's something that you needed to have who was present on that date. But in the very preceding sentence to this, we have the date right. On the front cover, we have the date right. It was just a fat finger thing that a finger reached for 4 and hit 5. And it wasn't, this happened before 2025. So it wasn't even one of those things where, you got mixed up in what year you were in. Then 2025 was still a whole year away when we did this. So I'm a little bit nervous about accepting in principle that every time we've got a typo in a case that we have to go back and reopen it in some way. It seems to me that you would really want to have something where it makes a substantial difference. And the applicants here, I don't even know for sure whether the applicants are aware of what this is because they have not been involved in any controversy dealing with this. This will come as a complete surprise to them. But we do have a view that it would be more regular to fix this if we can. I just think that the benefit of correcting the typographical error is something that if it's achievable at all, we certainly wouldn't want to get into the practice of doing this. Unless, of course, we're willing to designate still another member to proofread everything I write, which would be beneficial, but not necessarily a good use of our time. And I don't think that we need to have a board decision to do this. I think a board decision that would authorize us to correct typos would probably do the same thing. But I'm a little bit nervous about going and reopening somebody's permit when they haven't told us it's okay to do that. They've got something that's filed, something that they think that they've got there and so forth. And then for no reason in the world, somebody wants to open it to change a 4 to a 5 to a 4. And who knows what effect that will have on their plans. I just hate to do that without having consulted them and having them saying, they would ask the question, well, what exactly does that mean for us? Mm-hmm. And they haven't asked us to do it. And it's their risk at this point. So anyway, I'm not eager to run forward and do this, though I certainly did do mea culpa for having made the typographical error to begin with. But I just am worried about it and being overly careful here may actually do harm to people rather than help them out.
Yeah. Ms. Ralston, I know you had reached out to to the applicant. Did they ever respond?
Kristen, I did not hear back from them. The contractor, the building inspector called the contractor to let
Okay.
them know that it would come up tonight. And he would let them know what was going to happen and if they had any questions to contact me.
Okay. Okay. Certainly this is something I think that has no real rush to it. So I'm wondering if it just makes sense for the board to hold off on this and put it on for the following session. In the meantime, we can talk. Gives an opportunity to talk to council about it and see if it, is it something that is it a would be good to do kind of thing, or is it sort of a semi-imperative thing to do, or what exactly? But I do agree with Mr. Hanlon's assessment. I hate to reopen something and that would cause any kind of issue for somebody that already believes they're free and clear and underway.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also worried about, I don't exactly know how we go about accomplishing this procedurally, but if it means we have to treat it as an amendment to the special permit, or that we have to try to reopen the previous case and then have more of a hearing on it, that would be way overkill.
Yeah.
So, and I just can't believe that anybody could make a substantial argument that a typo of this nature would invalidate the permit, which is what the risk is, right?
Right.
That you think you have a permit, but you don't. So now you've got another year, umpteen months of delay while we fix our mistake. I just don't think that a typo, and if it does, we have an enormous corpus of invalid opinions out there. You know that in almost every case that we've had that reviews something from the far past, they've had plenty of typos in them. That just is the way it is.
No. All right. So with that, then I'm just going to go ahead and just take that off the agenda for the moment, and we'll come back to it next time. See where we are with that. Mr. Moore?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Steve Moore, Piedmont Street. I just wanted to say how shocked and saddened I am to hear that Mr. Hanlon introduced a typographical error to an opinion. His work is so important. He really should be more careful. You guys should.
I completely agree with that, and I've got about 40 or 50 associates I wish to look with. If they saw this today, they would say to themselves, "Okay, he really got what he deserved on that one."
I just want to say the world should cut you guys a little slack. You work pretty hard. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I certainly accept my share of the blame too, because I know I proofread that one. So we have that as well. All right. So that is the end of our regular business for tonight. Our next meetings, we have hearings for April 8th and April 22nd. So what do we have on the docket for those dates?
So for the next one, we're continuing with 20 Pond Lane.
Okay.
103 Thorndike is a variance and a special permit. 16 Lansdowne and 69 Henderson. I believe they're both additions / porches.
Oh,
I
okay.
think they both want to do some sort of porch thing. And just so you know, everything for them is up. You can start reading them now on both Novus or OpenGov. And then for the next one after that, we have 3 already, and they're all set to go for the 22nd. Let's see, hold on one second. It is, first one is 29 Hemlock. It is a house on a hill, and they're trying to make it, make changes for, to stay in place. 17 Brattle Place is a home occupation, and 319 Appleton is enclosing a front and back porch.
Oh, okay.
So, and all of them are up and ready to go if anybody wants to start reading them.
Great. Thank you very much. So on on the Municipal Empowerment Act, this was an act filed by Governor Healy at the start of the session, looking to do a bunch of different things from different municipalities, but it would also trying to make permanent the extension of the ability to hold meetings remotely. And that was going nowhere quickly. I think it sounds from I'd heard back from Representative Dave Rogers last week that it looked like they had come to an agreement on a 2-year extension, and that would be signed by the governor by the end of the week, that being last week. I haven't received an official confirmation that in fact did get signed, but that seems to be what everybody's operating under now. So we are still free to continue meeting remotely, which I think we're all sort of relieved is the case. So we will be meeting again on April 8th over Zoom. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, and a second.
Second,
Thanks, Mr. Dupont. So roll call vote to adjourn. Mr. Dupont,
yes.
Mr. Hanlon,
Yes.
Mr. Holly,
Yes.
Mr. LeBlanc,
Yes.
and as chair, I vote yes, except that I am going to read my last paragraph that I forgot to read into the record. Thank you all for your participation in tonight's meeting of the Arlington Zoning Board of Appeals. Appreciate everyone's patience throughout the meeting. I would especially like to thank Colleen Ralston, Mike Champa, and Jacqueline Munson for their assistance in preparing for and hosting our online meeting. Please note the purpose of the board's recording the meeting is to ensure the creation of an accurate record of its proceedings. It is our understanding the recording made by ACMi will be available on demand at acmi.tv within the coming days. If anyone has comments or recommendations, please send them via email to zba@town.arlington.ma.us. That email address is also listed on the Zoning Board of Appeals website. And to conclude tonight's meeting, we have adjourned. Thank you all very much. Good to see you all, and we'll
Good night, everybody.
see you
Good
in
night,
April.
everyone.
Have a
Night,
good
everyone.
night.
Night.